Okay, everybody, this is Marcel Pursuit. Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Blitz. I'm going to recap the first week of the NFL and go over other news and notes in the world of football. As always, if you want to follow everything that we do, head to the mothership, the sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Do a search for us on there under Sports Inquirer. You can find us and you'll see everything that we have going on. And finally, subscribe to us and follow us with our audio and video content providers such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Just do a search for us under Sports Inquirer and you'll be able to find everything that we have going on. Yeah, I think the title of this edition of the Gridiron Blitz, besides the NFL Week 1 recap, should be Overreaction Monday. We're recording this on November, not November. We're recording this on September 13th of 2021. But after the first week of the NFL season, and we still have one contest to go as we're recording this, still have Baltimore and Las Vegas. Every team that won the games that we're gonna go over, they're gonna go to the Super Bowl. They're gonna have a winning season. They're gonna win championships. Every team that lost their first game, and I think there's some Super Bowl contenders that lost their first contest, as we'll go over during the recap. They're not going to have a winning record. They're going to be terrible. And then the teams that came into the season with low expectations, they're going to go winless. They're not going to have a victory at all this year. Take a deep breath. I call it Overreaction Monday. Every Monday should be Overreaction Monday with the NFL, but especially after the first week. So you have to be very careful of all of that stuff. But let me highlight some superlatives, just some overarching thoughts I have from the first week of the season, and then we'll get to specific games and we'll go from there. The passing numbers, the trend in the NFL over the past few years has been, throw the ball a lot more, just the rule changes. These quarterbacks, they train all season, all in the off season, all year. The throwing ability is so strong. And and I'm a big stats person. When I go over my statistics, I'm going to name a lot of players from the 70s and 80s and even the 90s. And Hall of Famers aren't producing the type of numbers that we're seeing now, especially in the passing game side of things. Prime example, 4 quarterbacks on yesterday: New Orleans, Jameis Winston; Tom Brady for Tampa; Arizona's Kyler Murray; and Russell Wilson for Seattle. Each threw for at least 4 touchdown passes in their opening game. This is the first season at which at least 4 quarterbacks have registered 4 or more touchdown passes in week 1 since 1970. And Winston had 5 touchdown passes. That's a prime example. There have been plenty of Hall of Fame quarterbacks that have played since the 1970s that are retired and have moved on. But these guys, and honestly, 3 of them or 2 of them are future Hall of Famers, and Wilson and Brady. Winston and Murray probably have a little bit more work to do, but you get the idea of just the passing numbers and how they have been a major part of the game. The rookie signal callers have made a big impact. I made a statement on a previous show, and hope you go back to our archives and listen to what we've produced over the past few weeks. Just go to, I think it's our season preview, or the point is, I stated, and some other guys have said this too, I'm not the only person saying it, the potential of this rookie class, I don't want to say the best ever, because yes, there's the class of 83 with Elway, Marino, Kelly, Ken O'Brien, Todd Blackledge in that group. There's also the draft class with Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, 3 future Hall of Famers most likely. Definitely Roethlisberger, Rivers, and Manning will probably find their way in. So when you have a class with at least 3 Hall of Famers in that draft class, that's a pretty strong statement as far as being the best ever. And I'm not saying all these guys can be Hall of Famers. You look at the 2 or 3 may get there. 1 or 2 are going to be complete bust and not have very solid, I won't say bust, but not have solid NFL careers. But if you look at this grouping, we'll go over all of the contests. Each of them had flashes of some solid play, the ones that were able to play a lot. But you look at Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, each made their first career starts. It's at least one rookie quarterback has started in week 1 in 14 consecutive seasons. And that's the longest streak of the NFL since 1950. I think you saw some retirement, some transition with some of these teams. I don't think you're going to see this large amount of quarterbacks coming in over the next 3-4 years. You just look at the numbers, and I know you want to mention Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma and Sam Howell at North Carolina right now, and probably a quarterback we're not even thinking of. But still, I think it's the potential for a special rookie class. Let's see, and with those three rookie quarterbacks starting in the first games of the season, and then if you include the rookies from last year, it's the only season where, as I mentioned three rookie quarterbacks that started in week one, and then four quarterbacks, including Jones. Trey Lance threw a touchdown pass. Lawrence and Wilson had TD passes as well. Each of them had their first career touchdown pass in week one. Obviously, just their first NFL starts. And with Lance, that was his first appearance in the NFL. First time since 1970 that's happened. And the only other times that happened close to it was 2002 and 1971. So you're just seeing a lot of guys getting some early starts and getting early opportunities to play. And we have 7 first or second round quarterbacks, some of the ones that I've mentioned, and I'll go over them again. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati, Justin Herbert for the Chargers, Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia, Jones, Lawrence, and Tua from Miami, as well as Zach Wilson. Each started on kickoff weekend this week. And it's the second most starting quarterbacks that were first and second round picks that have started in opening week. There were 7 of them. Only other weeks to surpass that, only one was 2002. 10 starting quarterbacks were first, second round picks, or first or second year quarterbacks, I should say, got starting appearances. So you just see a lot of young quarterbacks getting a large amount of playing time. And there were times I started following football in the 80s, and I'm that old, in my 40s, and even in the 90s, even 2000s, you see guys 2-3 years having to sit behind somebody before they got a starting spot. Even more recently, if you look at the top quarterbacks in the NFL that you could think of, Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers probably being your top 5 in some order. Those guys had, and Tom Brady, with Drew Bledsoe, we'll go back to the 2000s, early 2000s with that. Those 3 guys had to sit behind a veteran starting quarterback before they got their time. And those are 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks going in the NFL right now. Times have changed with that. I think these franchises, the rookie salary cap helps with that in a big way. I think that you're able to build around your roster and have some more support for your rookie quarterback. And I said, these guys are veterans. They have been in passing camps, been throwing since, I think the collegiate system helps out in that regard. You're seeing a lot more open offenses. These guys are able to come in and contribute in a major way earlier than they have in the past. So I think that's a big factor as well when you're looking at the situation going on. With a large amount of rookie quarterbacks and second-year quarterbacks getting playing time, receivers have trended towards the younger side as well. And this from just 3 first-round receivers from this past draft: Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, Jalen Waddle for Miami, Devonta Smith for the Eagles. Each of them recorded their first career touchdown reception this past weekend. And it's the first season of the common draft, which dates back to 1970, that 3 rookie receivers were able to achieve that honor. So you have a large amount of these younger players coming in. Same deal with the quarterbacks, receivers as well, that they're coming in at a younger age and able to contribute in a major way. So those are some overarching themes that we have from this weekend. I'll start with Philadelphia and Atlanta. The Eagles are able to win at Atlanta 32-6. I think the reality is, I don't think Philadelphia is this good. I don't think Atlanta is this bad. But I think this is a trend or future of what you can expect to see, I think, for both franchises. With Philadelphia, it comes down to Jalen Hurts. If he's able to stay healthy, and he made some good improvements, you could tell from last season, I think that Philadelphia can contend for the NFC East. We looked at it in my preseason predictions, and I'll go over my predictions as we go over each game. And I highly recommend that you go to our site and see my predictions. I did the verbal podcast. I talked about it, and then I also put it in print as well. So you can go back and critique my predictions. I picked the Dallas to win the NFC East and to be the only playoff team from that division to be in the playoffs. But Philadelphia can make it interesting. They have offensively, there may be a little. I like Devonta Smith, but it's hard to go with the rookie as receiver as your top offensive threat. I know Kelsey's there. That's he's a veteran as well. But overall, as far as the offensive side to help things going, but they looked really good against Atlanta. And then defensively, Fletcher Cox is still on the team. They have good pass rush. They can cause some teams some trouble. So we'll see what happens with Philadelphia. Atlanta is the team I really thought, though. I picked them to finish last in the NFC South. So I'm not surprised that they got off to a slow start, but they have so many issues. And I've said, and we were based in Atlanta, Georgia, if this is your first time listening or watching us, for years, whether it was Dan Quinn, especially during his era, and even from the beginning, even their Super Bowl run, even until now, their line play has been bottom half of the league for years. They've had Matt Ryan, who has played Pro Bowl level multiple years, won an MVP. Julio Jones, probably a future Hall of Famer. They've had Calvin Ridley, who I think is a really good receiver. But they don't have good line play on either side. Offensively, you saw that yesterday. Just too many pass rushes that were let go. The offensive line just very lacking. Hennessy had a bad game. Just a lot of issues with that Falcons offensive line. And if you can't block anybody, you're not going to be able to get the ball to Ridley properly or get some running lanes for your running backs or for Kyle Pitts to be. And now, granted, it was his first NFL game, but he was targeting a minimal amount of times because if you can't block the defensive line that you're facing, it's going to be very tough for you to overall develop what you're trying to do. So I thought that the line play was not good. They got no pass rush on Jalen Hurts. He was able to throw for multiple touchdowns. Just able to have a very big day for the Eagles. So that was my takeaway from that contest. I look at Tampa defeating Dallas. We'll stick to the NFC East for a minute. Tampa was able to defeat Dallas on Thursday night, 31-29. My highlight from this is Dallas still lost. Dak Prescott threw for 403 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dallas still lost. Dallas defense forced 4 turnovers, and the Cowboys still lost. Now, Tom Brady did throw 4 touchdowns, and my note from that, as far as with the Bucs, Antonio Brown is going to be the best receiver on that team, be the most productive receiver on that team. He had 5 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. And look, we saw last year the emergence. Well, Mike Evans, he's been a Pro Bowler multiple years. Godwin's a solid receiver. Gronkowski is still there. I thought Gronkowski, he had a really good opening game, touchdown catches. I thought they tried to maybe save him more towards the end of the regular season into the playoffs when you really need him. But he looks fresh. He looks ready to go. But Antonio Brown, we all know his issues on and off the field, attitude. You just do a search on him, you see some of the issues he's had. If he can stay right and straight and focused and motivated with Tampa, and I think that atmosphere, especially led by Tom Brady, it helps us. If it doesn't work in Tampa, it's not going to work anywhere else for him. He can have a 100-catch season and produce. And look at his numbers. He's on the Hall of Fame track until he got sidetracked his last few years in Pittsburgh, really last year in Pittsburgh, and then that Oakland Las Vegas, that Raiders situation. If he's got money, got paid, so he's under contract, and not for a lot of money because obviously he's a risk, so he couldn't demand a large amount of money. If he stays right, he could be a premier receiver in the league, let alone with Tampa. Just the way especially on that slot position, he's your number 3 option from the slot. That's a tough for any defense to deal with. So that was my takeaway from that contest. I think Dallas wins the division. I think Tampa ultimately wins the NFC South, makes it back to the NFC Championship game. And I have the Packers making the Super Bowl, but man, that was a bad effort by Green Bay. They lost, I want to say, at New Orleans. It was a neutral site game because of everything going on in Louisiana and the recovery from Hurricane Ida. So the game was in Jacksonville, but New Orleans, the designated home team, defeated Tampa 38-3. Let's give New Orleans some respect before we get to the Green Bay issues. Jameis Winston, 14 for 20, 5 touchdown passes. But here's the big fact: no interceptions. Now, just the way he throws the ball, and they're going to throw it deeper, I think, this year and a little bit more often with New Orleans. He's not going to be as accurate as Drew Brees was, and that's okay. But I think you'll trade an interception or two for 4 or 5 more touchdowns that you were unable to execute with Brees, just as deteriorating arm strength. And just because he got older, that's just the way things are. Winston is a young guy. I don't even think he's 30 yet, but he has the arm strength, maybe one of the top arms in the NFL, talking strength wise. And he's not going to be 14 for 20. That's going to be hard to beat as far as efficiency and accuracy. But if he can throw for 65% to 70%, I mean, that's really high. I'll say if he can go in the 60s, can run it a little bit. I mean, he's not Kyler Murray running or Lamar Jackson running the ball. But if he gives you that improved efficiency and the threat to throw the ball deep, and that was without Michael Thomas. I expect Michael Thomas to play at some point this year. He's going to be, and he's a top 5 receiver in the league. I'm not saying I still think Tampa wins the division, but New Orleans, they opened my eyes to them being a playoff team, and I did not have them in the playoffs in my preseason predictions. But I thought that New Orleans really had a good effort there. Green Bay, they played poor on all sides of the ball. Defensively, no pass rush, gave up all that yardage, or gave up all those touchdowns to Winston. Kamara had a big game running the ball as well. But offensively, Aaron Rodgers, 15 for 28, 133 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I will never say an athlete doesn't care or is throwing away a game, but he did not look like himself. And as I said, I have him in the Super Bowl making an appearance. My Super Bowl champion comes out of the AFC. We'll get to them in a few minutes. But I think if you look at just the 2 bad throws, he had several bad throws, but just throwing the ball deep, especially that second one, where he's backed up against the end zone, and he just throws the ball 40 yards like it's a punt into double coverage. His receiver was not even close to the ball. And his offseason was not very good. And the melodrama, him wanting to retire, or maybe think about retiring, or be traded and wants more say in the decision making with Green Bay. Came into camp. He didn't do any of the mini camps. Came into camp training camp right when it opened. Didn't play in the preseason. This is the worst. Well, not the worst offseason. That's hyperbolic, but he did not prepare for that season opener, and the team was not prepared for that season opener. And I still think they have enough to win that division, and they're going to win a good amount of games because Rodgers is still a talent. He was an MVP last year, and the skills haven't regressed that much. But that looked like a team that went through the motions of the preseason, expecting to be okay. We're one of the 2-3 best teams in the NFL. We're in a conference championship game the past 2 years. We can show up and play an NFL game, and it could be Jacksonville, the Jets, Detroit, some of the worst teams in the NFL. If you show that effort, you're going to lose. And New Orleans is they've been a perennial playoff team. And I know Drew Brees isn't there anymore, but a lot of that talent is still there on that roster. And that was just a really bad situation and bad effort by Green Bay. I thought probably the game of the day, I think the game of the week, pending this matchup between Baltimore and I want to say Oakland so much, between Baltimore and Las Vegas that we have coming up later today. Kansas City and Cleveland was a very fun matchup. I thought Cleveland, I want to say they outplayed the Chiefs because they lost the game, but they played very, very well, except for 2 plays. That fumbled punt, where that punter still could have kicked the ball. Even when he dropped it and fumbled it a little bit, he didn't punt it. There were three big plays in that contest, but that was the fumbled punt, and he just tried to run and got taken down. Kansas City scores there, takes the lead. That's a big thing. The Baker Mayfield interception, and Mayfield had a solid game, 21 of 28, 321 yards, no touchdowns. And touchdowns are, I mean, if they score on the possession, that's fine. Whether it's a Nick Chubb rush or Hunt, as long as you get the ball in the end zone, that's a big thing. But no touchdown passes. Yeah, you want to see a little bit more production there. And that one interception, you have to take the sack there or throw it out of bounds. You can't go in between. And he was trying to throw the ball. He got clipped and was falling down and trying to throw the ball. And those balls get picked off by cornerbacks most of the time. And that's exactly what happened. And I still think Kansas City, they came back from 12 points down. And Mahomes, just go over his numbers, and they'll do okay, with Cleveland, I still think they're a team that I haven't picked to win a division in the AFC North. So they're a playoff team for me. They don't make it to the championship game of the AFC in my rankings or my predictions. So I still think that they have a lot of positivity aspects to this season. But yeah, that was a bad loss. That's a loss that, I mean, maybe they can learn from it and remember it. But this is the second time though that they've been in close contest against Kansas City and lost at Kansas City. In fact, remember last year the AFC Championship, the AFC semifinals, the divisional round, they were right there in that contest, and they lost it. And then this contest. So I don't know if Kansas City necessarily has their number, but they have not won those big games against the Chiefs. And then Pat Mahomes, all of his numbers are spectacular. 337 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And then Travis Kelce was his big target, 76 receiving yards and 2 receiving TDs. And then, of course, so big factors in the contest. Mahomes, that was his 47th career start. He has 14,489 career passing yards, which he surpassed Kurt Warner for the most passing yards by player in his first 50 career starts. So once again, Hall of Fame path. 117 touchdown passes so far in his career, more than Dan Marino had 116. So that's the most through the first 50 starts of a career. So once again, and you saw he made the big throws when he needed to make them. You saw him make the big pass to Hunt, the big throws to Kelce, just a special talent. And Kelce, that was 50th career receiving touchdown. He surpassed Lamar. He passed Vernon Davis as the 5th fastest tight end to reach 50 touchdown receptions in NFL history. So once again, another guy on a Hall of Fame path. But I thought that contest, I said, went back and forth both ways. 2 teams that will win their divisions and I think can make long postseason runs. Pittsburgh surprised me. They defeated Buffalo 23-16. Now, I do have the Steelers in the playoffs. I do want to take credit for that. But Buffalo is not only my AFC representative in the Super Bowl, I have them winning the Super Bowl. The Bills are my champions. And it can still happen. But that was, first of all, Steelers came back from down 10 points. Roethlisberger made some big throws when he needed to move the chain to get some big first downs. His arm strength looks like it's getting back to where it was 2 years ago. Remember last year, he was coming off the elbow injury, and he just was not right all last season, especially towards the end. But he looked good. You saw Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, the rookie. He got some big runs in. They need to do that a lot more. Just get that run aspect of their offense going. This isn't the days of 2-3 years ago. We had Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Washington and just all those big-time receivers that Roethlisberger can throw the ball 40 to 50 times a contest. Those days they're not there anymore. They have to run the ball more, especially Roethlisberger at this stage of his career. So I think that's a good balance that I saw from Pittsburgh. Buffalo's offense did struggle against Pittsburgh's defense. And you look at Josh Allen, 270 yards passing, 1 touchdown. He's my MVP for this season, by the way. I think that just not being able to score those touchdowns when they were close was a problem for them. But Pittsburgh's defense with TJ Watt, the richest, at least linebacker in NFL history. I know Lattimore signed the richest deal for the cornerback for the Saints, the richest cornerback deal in NFL history. I think TJ Watt is the richest defender ever with the numbers. Right, he's right up there. But point is, he sat out all of camp with the contract negotiations. He came back, no training camp, 2 sacks. I mean, he's maybe the best defender in the NFL right now. If you look at I think two boys at the Rams have a case to make in their situations, but he's right up there. And Pittsburgh's defense, which has been, and we think of Pittsburgh, we all think of the Steel Curtain, and even in the '90s with Greg Lloyd and with Kevin Green and all those and Kirkland, all those big time defensive players, and Rod Woodson. We think of all those guys over the years as far as the defense of the Steelers. Over the past 5-10 years, it's not really been necessarily the case with the Steelers having that elite defense in the NFL. This unit may have a chance to do that. And I think if they can do that, they'll be right there with Cleveland contending for the AFC North Division title. So I think that was really big for them. The Rams defeated Chicago 34-14. I even said it in my preview of the opening week of the season. I think I picked the Bears. No, I think I picked the Rams. I have to go over my picks. We'll do that in the next show. I said that if Matthew Stafford has a big day, he's going to be the runaway MVP and the darling of all the media out there, like myself. Sure enough, 3 touchdown passes. It looked really good. And Chicago's got a solid defense. They're not going to be able to do this all season, but man, and they're a playoff team in my. So I have Seattle winning the division, but I have them in the playoffs as far as the Rams go. Because Stafford, that's the big question mark. The defense with Jalen Ramsey, who was all over the field. If a cornerback can win Defensive Player of the Year, he could be that type of guy. We know about Aaron Donald, 3 defensive MVPs or Defensive Player of the Years already. He could be right there for a 4th. He's unblockable a lot of times. So their defense was the best statistically in the NFL last year. So we know they can defend. It's just consistency on the offense. Stafford, for one game, looked really good. Now he throws the ball deep, and McVay is going to be Sean McVay, the head coach, be so excited to have a deep thrower. He's going to have he's going to have those games where he throws for 2 interceptions, throws for 3, turns the ball over, and that's just going to happen when you throw the ball out. Same thing with Jameis Winston. When you have a quarterback with that type of arm and you have a offensive mind like Sean Payton in New Orleans and McVay with the Rams, they're going to throw the ball deep a lot, and you're going to have a lot of interceptions and turnovers. You just hope the benefit of it, similar to New Orleans, is that he's able to get those 3 or 4 touchdowns at crucial moments during the season that Breeze couldn't get for New Orleans, or in the Rams' case, with the Jared Goff, they were unable to get those big passes. So he looked really good in week 1. It was on prime time on NBC on the Sunday night game of the week. It looked awesome, but I say put the brakes on a little bit as far as that goes. Seattle looked really good. They defeated Indianapolis 28-16. Russell Wilson, 4 touchdown passes. I want to shortchange him. No interceptions. Passer rating 152.3. 11 career games with at least 4 TD passes, no interceptions. He now that's the most for a player through his first 10 seasons in the NFL. Brady, Peyton Manning, and Aaron Rodgers each have 10 of those type games in their career. Wilson has 11. Those are 3 future and current Hall of Famers because Manning got in this year. So future current Hall of Famer with Peyton Manning and then Brady and Rodgers be right there. Wilson's gonna be right there too. But big game for him because it wasn't as dramatic or maybe as public as Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay with the issues with the management. Wilson had that same deal. Remember, early in the offseason, this was the same Russell Wilson that made trade demands, or through his agent, made the trade demands. I want to be a Bear. I want to go to Las Vegas. I want to go play in New York with the Jets and all this other stuff. I forgot who the 4th team was. The point being, I think Dallas was the 4th team, something crazy like that. But the point is, he had issues with the front office and things that they were trying to do. And it kind of got settled, but we never got, and we saw that press conference with Wilson. He was or Pete Carroll was talking, and he came up behind him or next to him during the presser with the media, says all things are fine. Carroll gave a little chuckle and all of that. I don't know if he's still 100% happy in Seattle. He should be. They have 2 really good receivers in Lockett and Metcalf. The offensive line is a really good offensive line. They got Brown now there, signed him to I think a long-term deal. Their defense, while it's not the Legion of Boom from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it's still a pretty solid unit. That's a team that can make a long playoff run and be a Super Bowl contender. And I think Wilson realized that. And he came in professional, unlike Rodgers. I think professionals, that's an extreme word. I think he came in more focused into this season than Aaron Rodgers has. And I think that helped with Seattle as far as the team as a unit. And he had a really big day in his first game of the season. So that's a good sign for Seattle. And Indianapolis, you got to give them a few games. I think when you have Carson Wentz, a new quarterback, and he did not get to play complete a full preseason dealing with that foot injury. Then he had COVID protocols. He had to deal with all that stuff. He's not going to come in throwing 3, 4 touchdowns in the opening game. He has a lot to work with, or has to work on a lot of things just as a unit, himself and the Colts. I still think they could be a playoff team and contend for that division title, right with Tennessee. But yeah, and their schedule is really tough the first 7 to 8 games. So they might have a 2-5 type of start to the season and then reel off 4 or 5 wins, put themselves right back in the division race. I think that's the case with the Colts. So can't overreact with them and say they're not going to be good this year. Some teams, they look really good the first week and they continue to go well. And then some like Carolina, they beat the Jets. I don't have Carolina winning 6 games this year. I mean, they might get 8 or 9 and be a playoff team. You never know. But you can't look at one game and say, oh, the Panthers are going to be Super Bowl contenders. So you can't do that. You can't go the other way as well. And see a team like Buffalo and Indianapolis lose and say, oh, they're not going to be a playoff team. They're terrible. It's a balance. So you got to look at it that way. The Chargers going to Washington and winning that contest 20-16. Good effort for them to win that contest. You're going across the country against a really good defense in Washington, and you come out with the win. If Herbert threw for 500 yards or 100 yards, as long as you get that victory, that's the most important thing. He did throw for 337 yards and a touchdown. He had an interception in that contest as well, but they got the victory. That's the most important thing. I really thought about making them a playoff team in my predictions, but they're just outside the playoffs for me. But I mean, Herbert's a special talent at quarterback. He's going to be I think he's in my top 5 as far as MVP picks. He's going to have a really big year. So keep an eye out on the Chargers as far as that goes. Washington, their quarterback play is just not good enough. Even with Ryan Fitzpatrick, I had them finishing second in the division and not even making the playoffs in the NFC East. And now Fitzpatrick is dealing with a hip injury. As I mentioned, I'm in my 40s. When you have a problem like a hip, just the average person like me, I go to the gym a little bit and walk around. And if I have a hip issue, that's not good. He's a professional athlete and he's played a very long time in his career. That's a bad situation. And I hope it's not the case. I think he's had a interesting NFL career. But when you have, I think a normal guy, and we're hearing stories that maybe the similar injury that put Tua out for a very long time when he was at Alabama. I'll put it this way. If it's 4 weeks for a guy like Tua or maybe 6 weeks, it could be a season ender for Ryan Fitzpatrick just to where he's at in his career. Hope that's not the case. And then I know Heineke, he had a really big game in the playoffs last year against Tampa. Really gave Tampa their toughest test out of all the teams that they beat in the playoffs. When Tampa, they defeated Washington, New Orleans, Green Bay, and then the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That Washington contest is probably the toughest one out of all those 4. But I still think though that you can't trust them for for an entire season, and they're not going to bring in Cam Newton. That's not going to happen. Rough times for Washington with maybe a top 5 defense in the NFL, but that offense and that quarterback play is just not inspiring. San Francisco was able to defeat Detroit 41-33 to win their first game of the season. Garoppolo looked good, and I thought that when Kyle Shanahan was saying that he's going to play both guys in their opener and try to go with this rotation of quarterbacks from Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, I was kind of questioning that. But Lance came in and threw a touchdown pass in a package situation for him. I think Garoppolo, if he stays healthy, he is going to be their starting quarterback for a few weeks. No, I actually think, and I think that the tricky part is for them. If he plays well in that, if their roster stays healthy, that's a playoff team. And unless I mean, we saw Brian Flores do this last year in Miami. Interestingly enough, Ryan Fitzpatrick started for them and gave them some good play, and they end up ultimately switching over to Tua in the middle of the season when they were contending for a playoff spot. I don't know if Shanahan's going to do that. If Garoppolo's leash is very short. If he has one or two bad games, Lance will be in there and probably take over. But I don't think if he's healthy and plays and doesn't turn the ball over, which is an issue for him. San Francisco's going to be good enough. They're going to be a double-digit win team, and I don't know if you want to mess around with that in the middle of a season. So we'll see what happens there. Now, Detroit, they were down by a lot, tried to make a comeback effort, came up short. I just think it's going to be a long season for Detroit in that division. I was finishing last in that division, and with Minnesota, they had lost to Cincinnati, which we'll get to in a few minutes. That division's not very good. Green Bay's a class of it by, I think, a pretty solid margin. But Detroit at least showed some fight and some interest and made that competitive. A game that was not competitive was Arizona going to Tennessee and winning that contest 38-13. Kyler Murray, 289 passing yards, career high 4 touchdown passes. Didn't have an interception, but QB rating of 121. He had a rushing touchdown as well. And you got to include those rushes as an aspect of his game. Fourth time in his career with at least 3 TD passes and 1 rushing TD. He ties Josh Allen and Jack Kemp. Old school Jack Kemp. Look him up. Buffalo Bills, excellent quarterback for the most such games by player through his first 3 NFL seasons. And Allen, as we said, has been an MVP candidate even last year. You got to look at Kyler Murray as a guy that can do that. And I have Arizona. I do have them as a playoff team, but I'm not optimistic for them winning the division. And my pessimism in that wasn't necessarily Kyler Murray. I think with him, if he stays healthy, I mean, every team, every quarterback, you got to stay healthy. But his frame is so small, and we saw him wear down and get not necessarily out of games last year, but you could tell physically he wore down. And that's just the physicality of the position and the way he plays the game. He runs the ball quite a bit. He takes hits. He's a slight frame. It's just very tough for him. I think he's to stay healthy. But what you saw yesterday, he had a few runs, but not too many. He threw the ball, stayed in the pocket a lot more. That's going to be good for them. Defensively is where I had questions about Arizona. And like J.J. Watt is not the same Watt that we know from future Hall of Famer himself and all the defensive MVP, defensive player of the years and everything like that. But you cannot deny his presence being a big factor for them because Chandler Jones, 5 sacks in that contest, a career high, and 2 forced fumbles. Third player with at least 5 sacks in a week 1. Only other guys do that. Derek Thomas, a Hall of Famer, Bill Gay back in 1983. So, I mean, he had a awesome start to the season, but he only got to do 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles in the season opener, if you include the forced fumbles in there as well. Only the 5th guy or the 6th player to do that in any game since 2002. So, I mean, he just dominated that contest, and defensive player of the year is not out of question for him. He's not going to have 5 sacks every game, but he's a guy that he wants to get paid, wants a new contract, and he's had some, well, not issues, but focus. And remember, he was at New England and didn't work out there. He got sent to Arizona, but he looks motivated and ready to go. If he can have this type of perform or effort, he's going to be a really big force for them, and that helps them out in such a major way because we know that the Cardinals can put up points. Is can they stop anybody? And the Tennessee's a really good team. I think they still could be a playoff team, but giving up only 13 points to that offense, really good effort overall by Arizona in that contest. Cincinnati was able to defeat Minnesota 27-24, went to overtime. Evan McPherson, a rookie kicker, had to kick a 33-yard field goal with no time remaining in overtime for that contest. Second rookie kicker to do that in history. And the only other guy to do that is Jason Sanders, back in 2018. So it doesn't happen too often. The rookie kicker gets the game-winning field goal with no time remaining in an overtime. Minnesota blew the well, I'll say blew this game, but had multiple times to secure this victory. They let Joe Burrow and the Bengals stick around and keep things going. The Bengals able to convert multiple fourth downs in this contest, and it just shows Cincinnati. I think they're still going to finish last in the AFC North, but Burrow gives you hope. Jamar Chase had the issues with dropping the ball in the preseason and in training camp, even going so far as to say that he struggles to see the ball with the way the ball is painted and then the lines on the field and all this other stuff. And then he has a touchdown catch and close 100 yards receiving. So I guess he figured it out over. But that's a good sign for him to be in that spot and a good sign for the Bengals. So that was a really big win for Cincinnati, a team that may not have too many wins this year, but you see this performance against Minnesota to resolve. There's hope. Miami defeated New England 17-16. Miami is a playoff team for me, but that was not, they won the game. Kind of similar to the Chargers, as I said, with Washington. You go on the road, opening week of the season, you get a win, you take the victory and go back to your home. A win is a win. But I think they have to improve that offense. Tua has to be more assertive on the offensive end. But the defense really is, well, Miami with Flores, the head coach. We know all of his time as defensive coordinator in New England. He's going to have that team competitive every single contest because defensively, they're kind of turned into a New England junior in a way. They don't make many mistakes. They are solid on all three phases of the game, not explosive necessarily offensively because they don't have a Tom Brady, but still, I admit the Miami is going to be in every single contest. They're going to win a lot of these close games. I think Mac Jones did okay. 281 passing yards, 1 TD, 39 passing attempts. It's a pretty good amount of throws for this in a first start for Mac Jones. I think there's going to be more balance throughout the season. They're going to run the ball a little bit more in New England in that regard. I don't have them as a playoff team. I have Buffalo winning the division and then Miami being a playoff team. But overall, I think that's a swing contest, though. When you look at the playoffs, when you look at the standings at the end of the season, you can say that opening week win for Miami gets them a wild card spot, while New England is an outside looking in. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. I'll just blow through the rest of these contests to conclude our show. Carolina defeated the New York Jets 19-14. Good to see Christian McCaffrey back. 9 receptions in the contest, 187 scrimmage yards, 98 rushing, 89 receiving. 7 career games, at least 75 yards of catching, or receiving, and rushing. Only other guys to do that is Walter Payton, who had 6 of them in his career, and Marshall Faulk had 11 in his career, and Priest Holmes had 9. So he is in some elite company because he is in third place all time with those amount of yards receiving and rushing in a single game in the Super Bowl era. And his issue has been staying healthy. For how Lamar Jackson is not, well, Lamar too, but basically also with Kyler Murray as far as being slight and small for the quarterback position. McCaffrey's the same way. Now he's built very strong and he's muscular and fit, he's in very solid shape. But I mean, come on, he's an undersized guy and the running back takes a lot of hits. And he struggled with injuries. So he had a really good opening week of the season. And that's good because I think when healthy, he's in that argument for the best running back in the NFL. I have Derrick Henry, me personally. And I know there's other guys like Saquon Barkley, if he gets healthy and returns. And well, New York has their own issues. But he's in that running as far as top running backs in the entire league. So we'll see what happens there with Carolina. Houston defeated Jacksonville 37-21. Trevor Lawrence, 332 passing yards in his NFL debut, third most for the number 1 overall pick in history of his first start. Only Cam Newton and Vinny Testaverde had more passing yards in their first games as number 1 overall pick. Houston is they got to figure out this deal with Deshaun Watson. Like, and Tyrod Taylor, and good for him getting into the game and starting and getting a win. Remember last year, he was supposed to be a starter with the Chargers. They did the procedure with his, I guess, a chest and punctured the lung. And Justin Herbert went in there and started the rest of the season, and Tyrod was out of there. But it's good to see him find a home in Houston for now. But Deshaun Watson, he's not going to play another snap for another down for the Texans. Not only did he demand a trade from there and was disgruntled, we all know the off the field stuff that's happening with them. And I'm surprised at the NFL, and I guess they're getting smarter with this. They haven't done like a Trevor Bauer, his issues with the Dodgers and the allegations against him. They don't put him on administrative leave. He's active. He could play on the team. But we've seen the commissioner's exempt list where he gets paid, he gets compensated, but he's inactive. He doesn't cost you a spot on your roster, all this other stuff. The NFL's done none of that. They're kind of letting, but I think one, he's a marquee player in the league. And I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent. I just get a league. They want to be very careful with their approach to this situation. And the Texans are in a tough spot. Do they trade him? But their demands are very high. It's just a very odd situation for Houston, but they have to figure that out. In Jacksonville, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a really good player. I mean, he made 2 or 3 throws last night or yesterday that were spectacular. Had a few interceptions as well. It's going to happen. He's a rookie. But I don't know if Urban Meyer is going to be the guy in the end to be the person that leads him when he's in year 3, 4, and 5, when he is considered maybe a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to be there to see it. I just see his personality. I'm talking about Urban Meyer. I see their approach to things. The Tim Tebow situation showed me where he still has a collegiate approach to things. I don't think it's going to last very long for Urban Meyer. I think he's if it was college, he's an all-time great college head coach. NFL's different. And just his personality and mentality and approach to things, I'm not seeing it going well at all for him in Jacksonville. And then lastly, Denver defeated the Giants 27-13. Von Miller with 2 sacks. It's good to see him healthy, back up and running. Teddy Bridgewater didn't turn the ball over. Denver's going to try to win a lot of these. 27 points might be a little bit generous for them to average that this season, but they're going to try to score in the low 20s, rely on the defense, and hopefully get some wins that way. And I just don't think they're good enough to compete in a very, very competitive AFC if you look at the landscape. But we'll see what happens with Denver. And then with the Giants, multiple turnovers, and Daniel Jones outrushed Saquon Barkley. And I'm a Giants supporter, born and raised in New York. I like love the Big Blue, but this team just has 5-12 written all over it once again. And the team is badly constructed. The quarterback is uninspiring. He turns the ball over too much. They turn the ball over too much as a team. They just do not have a lot of positive aspects that you look at that team and say, okay, they're going to compete for the division. You win 7 games, you might win the NFC East this year. I don't see him even reaching that. So yeah, we'll see what happens there as it goes along. And that concludes today's edition of the Gridiron Blitz, recapping the first week of the NFL. As always, go to thesportsinquirer.net for premier news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our audio and video hosts such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and our social media platforms on YouTube. Well, YouTube is, yes, social media. It's all the same. But Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for us, follow everything that we have going on, and we'll see you next time. Good fight, good night, and be safe.